Tom Fitton. It is so great to have you on the program. Hi, Tom.
Hey, good to be with you, Glenn. Appreciate the good word.
You bet. You write in your new book, and I want to quote, in 2020, the left has even weaponized the COVID-19 pandemic. There are a number of ways our republic can be and is under assault. One of the most unsettling and truly vile would be the attempt to weaken its freedoms, its laws, its borders, and accountability of its government by exploiting a global pandemic for partisan or personal gain.
Yeah, well, that's what's happening. I mean, there's no good reason for the continued lockdowns other than a political agenda, mostly to get Donald Trump. In fact, the science suggests that some of the lockdown measures are unhelpful and dangerous and deadly. There's new numbers out just yesterday and today talking about how young people are being killed in part as thanks to the lockdown trauma. So you have increased deaths related to overdoses and things like that. It's just awful.
It is.
And, we've never had lockdowns to curtail an epidemic like this. It's never happened before in human history. The idea you would shut down an economy to curtail an epidemic is the equivalent of we're going to kill the patient to save them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had this radical experiment done on the American people. I don't recall giving informed consent to it.
No.
And there is no health basis for it. CDC never recommended it. And what has the result been? We have people praying in New York for fear of being arrested, being told that, you wear the wrong kind of mask, you'll be thrown off a plane. You can't even travel anymore. You're so restricted in your liberty. And now we're using it as an excuse to curtail and suppress the right to vote, where the left is telling people they're going to die if they vote in person. They shouldn't have to choose their health over their vote, which is about the most suppressive thing I've ever heard in terms of the right to vote. And so it's resulting in people relying on a more risky way to vote, voting by mail. So it's upending our entire society. We need to open the society up again. We got to get our freedom back.
You lodged a FOIA request for the Fauci emails between Fauci and the WHO. What do you think you're going to find, and did they deliver them?
I don't think we got them yet. I think we're supposed to get a batch this week, although they didn't want to give us anything until after the election. And it was a request that was really quite specific. I think it was done with our friends at the Daily Caller News Foundation, that give us emails around the beginning of the pandemic, communications between Fauci, his top deputy, concerning WHO, China, and the coronavirus. And, I'm a charitable guy, Glenn. I kind of was thinking maybe the Chinese were lying to us. I want to figure out what they were telling us and what lies were going on there. And, of course, they don't want to give us the documents. They've been slow-rolling the release of the records. It's only 4,000 pages or so. They're telling us Fauci has to review them all, which is rather extraordinary under the Freedom of Information Act. It's like saying Hillary Clinton has to review every email before we get, oh, wait, that already did happen. But that's what's happening now. And so we've got, what did Fauci and the CDC know and were being told by China and WHO about the coronavirus in the beginning of the epidemic? It's kind of an important issue. It's a political fight right now. And you have the deep state holding up the records.
So if you didn't believe in the deep state 4 years ago, I was kind of there. I mean, I didn't like the term deep state, but I did think that there was a legacy class of federal people that just didn't really care. I think that's what the deep state is, but it's more insidious than that, as we're seeing now. If you didn't believe it in 2016, okay, but if you don't believe it now, you're either in self-imposed ignorance or you just don't pay attention at all.
Yeah, my initial phrase for it was alt government. This government that thinks it's beyond control by civil authorities, meaning the people elected and put in place to actually run the government by the American people. And to be fair, Democrats and Republican presidents probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Sure.
The resistance at the top echelons of the agencies, mostly the senior executive service, senior well, it's literally there's a senior executive service, but the top level civil servants who think they know better than the peons put in place by the American people. And they just have contempt for anyone who thinks that they can tell them what to do. They see themselves as long-termers and political appointees as short-termers, and that's true whether you're Democrat or Republican. Now, if you're a Trump Republican or a conservative, the contempt is beyond all measure, because the dirty little secret is this deep state leadership I'm talking about, it's entirely, practically speaking, Democrat and left.
You talk about the deep state in your new book, and I want to ask you, it's different than it used to be. I think the Obama administration, and we have shown documents that lead one to believe this is absolutely true and verifiable, that they really almost militarized that deep state. They really were putting the final touches on it so it could go on and on and on. And I think that's why Donald Trump is so dangerous to what we have going on in the federal government, because he's not a part of it. And he is such a wrecking ball that he's exposing it, all of it. Are we going to see anyone actually go to jail on the things that are happening?
Oh, not without a radical change in who's doing the investigating and prosecuting. I don't think this Justice Department, under its current leadership, the FBI under its current leadership, is going to do anything more than we've seen to date. My perception has been that the criminal investigation has been woefully lacking, and you just can't rely. It's kind of an old adage. You can't rely on one agency to investigate itself, and that's what's happening essentially with the Justice Department here. We see it with the Biden laptop. It's the Wiener laptop all over again, Glenn. They had it, they wanted to hide it, and they only fessed up to having it once someone blew the whistle on
it. Is there going to be a way for the American people to know? I mean, I think the American people are realizing, oh, wait a minute, there is something to this. Is there, do you see an end to this, that the press finally says, oh, like they did with the Wiener laptop?
Well, we were, as the book recounts, we talked about our exposing the Clinton pay-to-play scandal in August of 2016. We didn't time it for that time. It was just when the documents came out, because the cover-up ended then as we broke it open. And I think this is Hillary Redux. And, the grand jury is probably going to be voters on Election Day, and they're going to figure out whether they want to indict Joe Biden one way or another. And that's the big question.
Well, you write extensively in your book about voter suppression, and how this is going to possibly change everything. The name of the book is Republic Under Assault by Tom Fitton. So Tom, do you have confidence that they won't be able to pull off voter fraud on a massive scale and change the results of the election?
No, I don't. And we see this with the Pennsylvania ruling, which I'm sure you've already covered, that of the Supreme Court, that allows ballots to be counted without a postmark. Frankly, Glenn, any ballot that comes in after Election Day shouldn't be counted, postmark or not.
No.
It's an open invitation to voter fraud, undermines confidence in the elections. I've become convinced, even since I've written the book, I've become even more convinced. The left has zero interest in your vote. They don't care about the votes. They've got a process in place and a program in place to overturn the results of the election if it turns out they don't like it. And, we talk, I'm sure you've talked about the Transition Integrity Project, where you've had a war game, and the guy playing Biden was no one other than John Podesta, and their war gaming was pushing it into Congress and having certain states threaten to secede from the Union in order to have the Biden Electoral College slate seated.
I think you missed the headline there. That war game was, what if Donald Trump wins in a landslide and there's no way to change the result? There's no court case that can change it. He just openly wins in a landslide. What do we do? Anyone who wanted the integrity to be involved with the transition would say, we admit defeat. But that's not what they did. They said, What you just said, that's their plan. If he wins in a landslide.
So sure enough, the left is pretending it's the right that won't accept the results of the election, when in fact it's the left that's planning for the type of acts that could precipitate a civil war. And how do I know about this? I read about it in the New York Times. It's incredible. And we're attacked for raising concerns about what they're doing.
Let me take 1 minute. And then we're going to come back with Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, which has just made the world of difference, watching over both parties at all times. Judicial Watch, he's got a new book out called A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. He actually puts the reader in an uncomfortable situation towards the end, because he's putting a lot of weight on what you do. And I'm going to talk to him about that coming up in just a second. We're talking to Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. His latest book is A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on American Freedom. And you look at all of the ways we're being attacked. And Tom, I don't think there's ever been a time when America has been this close to the end. Would you agree with that?
I think our republic is tottering. I agree, Glenn. I mean, we've had the Civil War, of course.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. That's a bigger. But in terms of our modern American history, I think this is like a '68 France moment. This last 2 weeks with big tech abusing its powers, engaging in business fraud to suppress information to help Joe Biden while hurting President Trump, just shows you that the left doesn't need the government necessarily to end our freedoms.
You know, what's crazy, Tom, is they say that they're only doing this to protect against, crazy stories and conspiracy theories. And so they're just trying to make sure that the information is correct that goes out, which sounds all noble, but they don't do that for the other side. It's not fairly applied. And the public square now is social media.
Well, that's an interesting First Amendment issue. I think it's even simpler than that. They're engaged in business fraud. They're engaged in the sort of fraud that any other company would be shut down over, which is falsely saying they're doing one thing when in fact they have another reason for doing it.
So they're saying that they're
promised to be neutral and
Right.
they're not being neutral, as you point out.
Right.
That's fraud. The FTC should have been on this months ago when President Trump, frankly, signed an executive order telling them to get on. And now look where we are. And as Justice Thomas has pointed out last week, Section 230, as read simply, doesn't allow them to censor folks because they don't like their ideas, as opposed to them being terrorists or otherwise engaging in conduct which is obviously outlawed.
Okay, so I want to talk to you. We only have about 2 minutes left. I want to talk to you about microsense advocacy. What does that mean? And tell me about the solutions.
Well, Judicial Watch does this work, but everyone else can be doing what Judicial Watch is doing. Share information. Be active. Ask your government about what they're up to. Get information out about government wrongdoing to the proper authorities. Collectively organize. I hate to use that term, but talk to friends and colleagues about what you can do together. You're going to be talking about Rudy Giuliani. He's a one citizen who's changed the future potentially of the country because of his individual activism that he is engaged in, despite threats of jail and vicious, nasty personal attacks. And it was because of his individual activism do we now know about the depth and depravity of the Biden corruption issue. We need to be doing that every day on every issue, local, state, and federal. We've got this precious right God gave us to petition our government. It's enshrined in the Constitution. Are we exercising it every day to protect our republic? I hope we are. I know we are at Judicial Watch. I think we are, and I think citizens need to exercise their personal stake in this.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for all that you have done over the years, and thanks for being on the program today. That's Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, author of A Republic Under Assault, The Left's Ongoing Attack on America's Freedom. Make sure you pick it up and look at the solutions section, not just the problems, but the problem section is eye-opening.